So Stadium Stampede, the second version, the Inner Circle against the Pinnacle. The Pinnacle, well, we see a limo enter TIAA Bank Field, and out of the limo is MJF, who cuts a promo on the Inner Circle when Judas begins to play, and all of a sudden, all 5 members of the Inner Circle rappel down the scoreboard in the football field to their music as the crowd is singing along.
This was a fucking crazy entrance. Like the visual of these 5 men just like rappelling down this giant skyscraper of a scoreboard, including Chris Jericho, who
just a few weeks ago said that was one of the scariest things I've ever done in my life, was taking that bump off the cage, and you'll never see me do it again. Dude, I would take that bump off that cage 100 times before I'm doing this.
Clearly, like, none of these 5 afraid of heights, because this visual was insane. And Jericho still had his arm in a sling, right?
Yeah. I mean, like, he had like the dislocated elbow, and worked with it here. So this was interesting. Like, I didn't know how they were going to put this together. Like, obviously, you start in the field, and you would have to do a lot of taped elements, but there was certainly a lot less live than I expected. They went. Like the whole match as a whole, it went just over 31 minutes, and probably like almost 25 of it was outside of the arena.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was just like last year. I mean, it was a cinematic match, with them starting in the field and then breaking off into individual rooms.
Which you kind of have to deliver to people. I mean, that is what the viewer at home wants when you're promoting Stadium Stampede. So, I mean, first of all, I give credit to everyone involved. Like, this is a 30-minute movie that they put together. Like, this is a really complex undertaking, and they just divided everyone up based on their dance partner, and those were the scenes that we went to. Like, chapter 1, for lack of a better term, was, first, the Inner Circle all chased after MJF, who hid in the limo, and then the FTR truck drove in, and that's where all of the Pinnacle was, and the fight begins on the field. Jericho and MJF, they square off.
Well, I just wanted to add that, so throughout this entire thing, they still pipe in the audio from the audience.
Yep.
And I don't know if the expectation was that the crowd would be going crazy, but from what we could hear, it was just kind of, just them being quiet, like it was in a movie theater. I mean, if you remember when they did Blood and Guts, the rest of the show was supposedly crowd audio as well, played on the screen for the tape portion of the show, and they sounded really loud there too. But that was after instruction. From what I could tell, they didn't give that. It didn't work here because the crowd was pretty quiet throughout this cinematic portion.
Yeah, we're not going to go beat by beat here because there was so much to this. Pretty much, I mean, you can certainly there was definitely some comedic elements, but not overt. I mean, we had like the megaphone spot with Jericho, some of the Jericho MJF stuff. They had some cute stuff, but I would never say any of this really dived into comedy per se.
To be honest, I would say maybe not enough, because I see this, and while I thought it was like a really good backstage hardcore match, I thought it kind of missed a lot of the personality of the first one. And I don't know if you can do Stadium Stampede without, that sort of bit more of that slapstickiness.
It's tough. Like, this is a grudge feud. It would have been really tough, I think, to do that. They got Urban Meyer, the coach of the Jaguars, to not only do a cameo, but also swear after he handed a laptop over to Jericho to attack MJF with. Wardlow and Hager battled it out in a walk-in freezer, which, low-key, my favorite moment was Wardlow grabbing an icicle to try and attack Jake Hager with. And
was that the first icicle spot in a pro wrestling match?
I am not aware of anyone ever trying to attack someone with an icicle before, but I thought that was a pretty great spot. The next one, it's Guevara and Spears, where Spears is in this dimly lit room full of hundreds of chairs. I don't know how the hell they've got a room dedicated to chairs, but it was perfect for the Spears character.
I mean, it's a stadium, and they have to put chairs out for concerts and whatnot. So it was a brilliant visual. Yeah. It felt like he was about to do a dance number.
Well, Guevara like just turned this into like this incredible fight scene. He like leaped off the wall. This match, as we would get into, was pretty much like Guevara was supposed to be the starring member of this. And at the end of their fight sequence, Guevara is handcuffed, but spots bolt cutters. And that's how we are left. We go to the nightclub. Santana and Ortiz go and meet up with the best dressed group of FTR and Tully Blanchard. I know I praise Tully Blanchard a lot. This man is just the best. This
Tully
outfit,
Blanchard, yeah, like forget Sting taking his shirt off, okay? Tully Blanchard with the arms cut off, sleeveless thing with jeans and a handkerchief around his neck. It was the look of the night. Yeah,
this was great. The four all had a drink, and then the DJ is playing, and it's like a pull focus on the DJ, and it's Conan.
That was great. Yes,
that was a great cameo. And Tully tries to get involved using a weapon and is stopped by Conan. And it was just like a nice kind of ode to, those that know the backstory and utilizing Conan here. And they had this long brawl in the nightclub. We go back to Hager and Wardlow gets chokeslammed through a crate. Jericho and MJF go through the office space, which included a cardboard cutout of Shad Khan that Jericho used to attack MJF with. Into the boardroom where Jericho found Floyd the baseball bat. Spears then gets chased off by a group of motorcycles as these random dudes who are hanging out.
Excalibur called them the Inner Cycle Motorcycle Club. So we are supposed to believe that they have their own motorcycle club now?
Yeah, exactly. That's going to be absolutely a t-shirt. The Inner Circle Motors. I'm sure Jericho's gotten the Sons of Anarchy, and that was the theme here.
Well, they were wearing like motorcycle vests, so
they did. Yes,
they have an affiliation now.
Spears gets chased by the group of motorcycles and hides. Jericho and MJF then make their way into Daly's place. Guevara drives into Daly's place with a golf cart, chasing down Spears and then nailing the guy. And then it's Guevara and Spears that enter the ring in Daly's place. Everyone else is dead. MJF looked like he got a vasectomy on this.
On the banister, yeah.
Yeah, he just got dropped right on there. And Shivani said, I hope he has a cup. And JR said, I hope he doesn't. And that was the end of MJF. So,
yeah.
Guevara and Spears are having it out in the ring. There was a springboard by Guevara and nailed with a chair. But Spears continues with the chair shots. Guevara kicks out and then hits the GTH, curb stomps Spears into the chair in the corner and ends it with a 630 senton, pinning Sean Spears after 31 minutes and 17 seconds for the Inner Circle to prevail. They all joined in the ring. They played Judas and the crowd sang to go off the air. That was a great idea.
It really was.
Perfect ending.
It was exactly as you had said,
Listen, this was really well laid out. This was the only part of the show where it was like, I felt like the length. It was just, but listen, it's not really a knock on the match. This is not going to be everyone's cup of tea. It's like, I could go or not with whatever's people's opinion is of it. But to me, it was like just, the crowd was such a big part of this show that I don't care how great this was. I didn't want 25 minutes away from the crowd. It's like we've had a year plus away from the crowd. I didn't need another 25 away from it. That would be my only critique on this. But dude, this whole crowd stayed there at Daly's place and watched this on a screen. So they loved it. There was a lot of creativity in this. And it all comes down to whether these style of matches, whether you like them or don't. It's not going to be everyone's favorite.
I thought at the very, all of this has been experimental. Everything over the past year has largely been experimental, especially when it comes to these cinematic matches. And I feel like this time, when it was time to promote a pay-per-view, they were kind of stuck in a way because this is your first show back with the crowd. But at the same time, you've built so much brand value in the Stadium Stampede that I think it was completely effective as a draw, to headline this pay-per-view. And I absolutely think this should have main evented because it was the match with the most anticipation. It was the match with the greatest stakes. But unfortunately, that means you have to do a Stadium Stampede cinematic match. We had wondered, John, you and I think a lot of people, when cinematic matches were going on, will they stay after the pandemic is over? Can the crowd, be engaged with, something like the boneyard match, not barnyard.
Barnyard match.
Boneyard match or Stadium Stampede. Stadium Stampede last year was my cinematic match of the year. And to me, like, this had as much of a chance as any other match, to captivate the crowd's attention. I think we saw tonight that it didn't completely work. And I wonder if last year's match took place like on the screen instead of this year's match, would it have made a difference? I'm not really sure, because I do think that last year's match was higher in quality in terms of maybe creativity, in terms of like beat for beat funniness. This year, I thought they went, understandably the more serious route, but at the same time, kind of lost a lot of like what made last year special. But that said, everybody in this match worked really hard. Like, they all took a lot of very brutal shots, in what essentially became like a pretty violent backstage hardcore match. A lot of creativity too, throughout from everybody. But I do think the lack of like, fun moments, they had a lot of them. Like they had, like, I thought the Jaguars coach was a great bit. The Conan thing was a great bit, but it was not, the ratio was not like enough. The rest of it just kind of played out like your stereotypical backstage hardcore match. And I thought it went too long overall. Like, this definitely probably could have used a lot more tightening up in it with the pre-taped elements, and then they probably should have gone to the live attendance a lot sooner. I also think the culminating bits, like the culminating sequence, I feel like needed to involve everybody. This should have been like the end of Avengers Endgame, when everybody comes in and you see this live in front of the arena, big brawl involving everyone. Having Sammy just kind of like be the lone person, it was nice. It was like, it made for a kind of like a nice, poetic climax to, last year's match. But I think it should have felt bigger with everybody there.
I think to that point though, like, I really like that Guevara got that big spotlight out of this. And you can also, by the way they did it, without the rest of the Pinnacle there, Shawn Spears can be the fall guy for the Pinnacle, that they can somewhat, like, he is the one that lost it for the team. And maybe he's kicked out of the group or something like that, that the other Pinnacle members were not part of the finish.
I guess just, I think they could have done the same sequence, but having everybody surrounding the ring at least like somewhat involved, I feel like we were missing that like same creativity that like would have felt like a good climax for this whole thing. But I have to say, like, maybe the most impressive thing about this entire thing was the great effort they made in using reverse psychology with that go home show, with that big, inner circle goodbye to lead us to think that there was a chance that this match ended the other way.
Which was very, very smart, because tonight's match, like, your headline was either going to be the inner circle wins or the inner circle loses. If you know what I mean. Like, the Pinnacle winning, the story is the inner circle. And they really, it'll be a real test of how much people believed in that stipulation, if it meant something. And if tonight's number surprises us and it's right in the ballpark of what they just did in March, and who's to say it's not, I can't disagree if they come back with another Stadium Stampede, because that would be your pay-per-view audience saying they want this match once a year. And I mean, there didn't appear to be, like, that crowd, I didn't get a great look at it, but I would be very curious to see if anyone left during that main event. I would doubt it would be a notable number that didn't stay till that very last pinfall.
It definitely, like, they built Stadium Stampede up so much now through 2 years that I don't think you should just throw it away. Now, like, would they deem this one successful enough to headline another pay-per-view, and would the audience be interested in seeing another one of these? I think it depends how this one draws. I think you can definitely advertise it, but I do think the concept needs some retooling, for a live audience. There needs to be a lot more maybe crowd participation throughout.
Yeah, I could certainly see that. Like for me personally, if I was somebody that AEW was coming to my town and that was the headliner, I I want to watch that at home. I think that's the best way to watch that. Now, that said, they gave you an incredible 3.5 hours before that. I could never leave complaining about that. And that takes us to our overall view. I thought this was an excellent pay-per-view. I thought one of AEW's best. I would have to, like, I guess Revolution last year is a lot of people's like high mark when it comes to that. That tag match is one of my best matches this year. It was my match of the show tonight. There was some incredible wrestling, a phenomenal crowd. Like lulls aside or just little things, that's all they were to me, were little things that you can critique. This was a excellent pay-per-view, I thought.
You know, I spent 4.5 hours watching wrestling, and I felt energized by the end, you know, and that to me is like a sign of a really good show. It was not without its faults, certainly. It definitely dipped in the middle, but it started off strong, and I thought it ended off like, you know, despite maybe not being perfect, I thought it ended really strong with some really great highlights throughout the event. So a really entertaining pay-per-view overall.
Yeah, a really great scene at the end with like Judas playing. Like it was like a really great ending to the story, and the baby faces getting the big win at the end. So there you go. That is AEW Double or Nothing 2021. We're going to open the phone lines, and we're going to try and get to as many of you as possible. So let's jump in.